Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Ang mag-aaral dito sa may classroom siya.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alhamdulillahirrabbilalamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man tabi'i bi asani ila yaumiddin. Amma ba'du. The Honorable Dr. Ani Susanti MPDBI as the Head of English Education Department, Universitas Ahmad Dahlan. The Honorable Ms. Rahmi Munfangati as SMPD as the Secretary of English Education Department, Universitas Ahmad Dahlan. The Honorable Professor Dr. Yazid Bastomi MA, the Professor of Applied Linguistics FSUM. The Honorable Dr. Gerard Lee Atienza from Capiz State University, Philippines. The Honorable Dr. Rosandro Villarreal from Capiz State University, Philippines. And the Honorable, our moderators, Dr. Ikme Nur Octavian TMA and Ms. Fauzia SPDMA. And all of the participants, the students from Philippines and committee whom I love. All praise be to Allah, the Lord of the Lord, the King of the King, who makes all everything in the universe, who has made us from the darkness
to the
and don't
likeness.
forget praying and greeting to we send to our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who has brought us from the darkness to the path of light. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Aulia Hidayati as the mistress of this event today, and I would like to say welcome to the guest lectures with the topic Current Trends in Applied Linguistics. Ladies and gentlemen, before we go into our agenda today, let me read the several agenda. First is opening, second a playback of Indonesia Raya song and Mars Universitas Ahmad Dahlan, third main agenda, and the last is closing. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first agenda is opening. Let's open our event today by reciting Basmalah together.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the next agenda is singing Indonesian anthem and Mars Universitas Ahmad Dahlan. For the operator and the committees, please play the song one.
Indonesia
Thank you for the operator, and ladies and gentlemen, and all of the participants. We have come to the main agenda. This guest lecture with the topic Current Trend in Applied Linguistics. This session will be led by our moderator, Miss Fauzia SPDMA. For Miss Fauzia, time is yours.
Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, all participants, my beloved students from UAD and also students from Capiz State University, Philippines. First of all, let us thanks to Allah because of His blessing that I'm able to join here to this guest lecture entitled Current Trends in Applied Linguistics. I would like also to say welcome to UAD, Prof. Yazid Bastami, MA. Thank you for coming, Prof. It's an honor for me to be here to accompany you as the moderator for this session. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and all participants for this workshop. Before the first presentation from the first presenter, I would like to give you some information about Prof. Yazid. So Prof. Yazid Bastami MA is a faculty member at the Department of English Faculty of Letters, Universitas Negeri Malang. He spent a stint of pre-doctoral research at the English Language Institute, University of Michigan, USA. Then his educational background and research interests have led him to work in the area of applied linguistics, leading to his professorship. In addition to his tenure in the alma mater, he was also once appointed adjunct lecturer at the University of New England, Australia, with the main job of co-supervising a PhD thesis writing. Then in 2019, he was a visiting professor at Linnaeus University, Sweden, sponsored by Erasmus+. Then recently, he has also conducted as a co-supervisor for 2 PhD students at Charles Darwin University, Australia. So I think we are very lucky here because we are given an opportunity to gain knowledge and also learn together from the expert of this field. All right, I would like to divide this section into 2 sections. The first section is presentation from Prof. Yazid, and then the second one is question and answer. And for those who want to ask a question, you may able to write down in a chat room, or if you want to ask directly to Prof. Yazid, we will have the sharing session after the presentation. Okay, now we come to the main agenda. Prof. Yazid, can you hear my voice clearly?
Yes, Bu. Assalamualaikum.
Ya, waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, Pak Yazid, time is yours.
Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa ala. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Allahumma shif qalbi min al-ghaflah wa alimni ma lam akun a'lam bayni kulli ma as'alu an ya man la ilaha illa hu la ma'budu siwa. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me here so that I can be with you all. Thank you, Ms. Moderator, for the kind introduction of me. Can you hear me? I seem to be breathing.
Yes, very clear, Prof. Yazid.
Okay,
Yes, clear.
Thank you, Bu.
Okay.
All right, well, first of all, as a Javanese, let me use the Javanese rhetoric. And usually Japanese rhetoric starts with a kind of apology. My first apology is, well, yeah, my apology, my presentation doesn't meet your expectation. And the second apology is that
41 participants are in the servers.
Excuse me. Okay. And my second apology is that my PPT is not going to be a real PPT. It's going to be powered text. So I'm going to read some of the presentation, and it means that we are going to read together. I don't know whether that's going to be like, teaching and learning process in primary schools. So my apology for that. And the third one is that it's a kind of information that my presentation will be pretty much on the idea by Agiriga. I don't know how to pronounce that, but I guess Okay, let me just pronounce it that way. Agiriga et al. So I owe my presentation to Agiriga et al. a lot. So you'd like to read more later, then you can read Agiriga et al.'s writing on this. So I'm going to talk about current trends in applied linguistics. Well, but actually I don't know whether I'm really current or not. I know that I'm in the area of applied linguistics, but well, I'm suspicious of myself actually, whether I'm current or not. But let me try. Let me share my PPT, not real PPT. I haven't got enough time actually to make a preparation, so that's another kind of apology. Okay, wondering if my PPT appears well on your screen.
Yes,
All right, current trends and applied linguistics. Does it appear well, Bu Ani?
Yes, very clear, Prof.
Okay, good, because usually
I like the
my
picture. Is it owl?
Thank you. Well, usually my laptop doesn't work well with the Zoom. Whenever I try to have the slideshow, then usually it doesn't work well. All right, if it works well, then really I'm thankful to God. Okay, current trends and applied linguistics. Let me have this. That my talk will be around these three issues, actually. Not really issues, but the first one would be our attempt to define what's meant by applied linguistics. And then I'm going to present some kind of exemplification. I'm going to draw some kind of conclusion, even if the conclusion is not that good conclusion, I think. I know that, okay, there is some kind of force making me to come to that conclusion, even though I cannot tell the whole story behind that. All right, let me try to press this. Okay, let me refer to Garrison. Well, Garrison believes, well, my way of presentation is more incremental, a bit like, what do you call, inductive approach. I'm not going to talk about advanced organizers first or whatever, but let me just delve into this. Garrison believes that the traditional and widespread conceptualization of the term remains the narrowest point of view, which construes applied linguistics as the application of linguistic research to mother tongue education and to the teaching and learning of foreign and second languages. So I believe everybody is quite aware of this, but I think I need to bring this issue to later, I hope, to the broader picture of applied linguistics, and I hope you can also see the wider backdrop of what's meant by applied linguistics. And then, well, we try to come to the issue about the currency here in sense, but not really. But my point here is that I hope you can see, if you're interested in such a kind of research topic, then probably, well, my intention here is that you can see that your research is somewhere against the backdrop of applied linguistics I'm going to talk about here in terms of the definition. So that's by Garrison, and then let me move on. As I said before, I owe this presentation to Agiriga. I don't know how to pronounce that. Probably somebody from the Philippines know how to pronounce this. And Agiriga, commenting on this view by Garrison, considers its implication. Thus holds that this traditional perception of applied linguistics delimits it to educational problems. And I think if you are in the area of ELT or English language teaching or English language education, probably your understanding about applied linguistics thus far has been around this definition. Well, my own definition when I was still young, also of this kind, and somehow I've got a different understanding recently based on my reading, particularly starting well about 10 years ago. according to this view, the central issues of applied linguistics are language learning and acquisition, error analysis. Error analysis is was quite popular around 1970s, I guess, 1980s. But few years ago, when I acted as one of the assessors of PAN-PT, I also found that at one big universities, I found that the curriculum still talk about error analysis, whereas some other people have made some kind of correction or revision about whether we still need to talk about error analysis. Well, personally speaking, I have a view that error analysis is still what you call beneficial to some extent, even though currently some people probably have tried to attack this idea, whatever it is. And then another point is also about testing and teaching methodology and technology, issues that circumscribe applied linguistics within an instructional setting or scope. So many people in the applied linguistics define applied linguistics as this. And people may refer to this as traditional definition. So this traditional circumscription of applied linguistics noted by Garrison has been under attack in the literature by counter views which contend for a postmodernist perspective, hence perceiving this view to be too conservative and thus not encompassing the growing multidisciplinary areas of research interest in the field. So some people have tried to, have counterattack to this, or against this traditional view, particularly from using postmodernist perspective. And that is understandable because nowadays, in general, postmodernism is also embed the trend in many areas, particularly in the social sciences, probably also in humanities, literary studies, all those things. So that is understandable if a particular kind of ism is in power, then the ism is also accepted in many areas, many relevant areas, of course. So I guess that is quite understandable. And that's also true in the idea of applied linguistics, where people also adopt the postmodernist perspective to to try to question the traditional definition of applied linguistics. So that is really understandable. And exponents of a new view to applied linguistics argue for a more inclusive perception of applied linguistics, averring that the discipline has exceeded its inceptional limits, given that it is an evolving discipline, and as such has raked in other hitherto excluded areas of research concerns. And this is also understandable from, research methodological point of view, because, in research methodology, we tend to talk about the fact that, we as human beings are always curious about many things. And I believe the application, the implementation of this curiosity in research then also drives people to think about other theories or possible research areas. And there's also some people are not really content with the conservative definition of discipline. So they would like to, have a kind of adventurous research due to their curiosity. I guess that is natural enough and understandable. So hence they advance a broader interpretation of applied linguistics, which is widely inclusive, construing applied linguistics as not only limited to language education alone, but also covering different areas of language problems in society, practical and social problems of all kinds. So this is quite encompassing and overarching in a sense. And from the standpoint of this broad view of applied linguistics, Smith and Silsimersia, I don't know again how to pronounce that name, Silsimersia probably. Well, those two people offer one such broad perceptions. According to them, applied linguistics is concerned with increasing understanding of the role of language in human affairs. So that is quite overarching, human affairs, and the number of human affairs are almost uncountable actually. But in English, it's still plural, indicating that it's countable. And thereby with providing the knowledge necessary for those who are responsible for taking language. I mean, in the area of linguistics, also work in the laboratory. Okay, let me just press on. So this inclusive view of applied linguistics has, however, been under attack in research literature. The thinking is that with such broadening of perspective, practitioners in the field will lack definite knowledge of the precise tasks that make them applied linguists. So to some extent, this is also problematic. If we adopt the inclusive and overarching view of the definition of applied linguistics, then the implication is that we may lose the precise task of what make us applied linguists. In other words, we lose the focus. Okay, so there's a kind of, what do you call, dissenting views, and that is really normal actually in the academic field, in the academia, that we have dissenting views about certain issues, including this issue of the definition of applied linguistics. So the delimitation of applied linguistics to all language-related social problems does not take into consideration the fact that such problems will continue to broaden and that human language problems are too complex and large to be handled by a single discipline like applied linguistics. And the implication of this inclusive view of applied linguistics is that both the discipline and its practitioners are in a state of flux as human language-related problems broaden and evolve. And as remarked earlier, this has occasioned the question of what the identity of practitioners in the field is, since precision is the hallmark of identification. Well, it depends though, whether you are concerned with this precision or whether you are concerned with, what do you call, the more inclusive understanding of the definition of applied linguistics. Well, later on, I hope you will have more, what do you call, more informed understanding about this issue. And in your research, my hope is that you will have more informed decision about this, whether you are going to pursue your research within the limit of more traditional understanding of the definition of applied linguistics, or whether you want to adopt more inclusive view of what is meant by applied linguistics. The point here is that we need to have more informed decision about this, and informed understanding about where we are, whether we are in the camp of more traditional understanding of applied linguistics, or whether we are in the camp of more inclusive view of applied linguistics. So my hope here is, my intention here is that you have more, what do you call, a clearer position of where you are. And Agiriga, again, voicing out concern about this, submits that in the revolutionary zeal of making applied linguistics more inclusive in orientation, researchers have mapped language and cognition or psycholinguistics, language and society or social linguistics, language and writing or orthography studies, language and technology, as in computer-based corpus linguistics, etc., onto applied linguistics. Some people, of course, have their, what do you call, objection to this. But once I also heard no, not once, twice. I heard a professor in the area of literary studies at Universitas Gadjah Mada commented or observed that actually literary studies, according to her, literary studies also belongs to applied linguistics. So I believe when she mentioned that kind of statement, then her orientation is towards this more overarching definition of what is meant by applied linguistics. Well, let me press on. Davies and Elder, in the Handbook of Applied Linguistics, describe the difference between linguistics and applied linguistics. In their words, while linguistics is primarily concerned with the language in itself and with language problems insofar as they provide evidence for better language description or for teaching a linguistic theory, applied linguistics is interested in language problems for what they reveal about the role of language in people's daily lives and whether intervention is either possible or desirable. So you see this, that Davies and Elder tries to draw demarcation line between linguistics and applied linguistics. I guess this is important simply because many people believe that, applied linguistics, appear to its existence out of linguistics. Linguistics per se is understood as more theoretical, and then the applied side of it is applied linguistics. So many people believe it that way, and that is understandable as well. In some universities, we can still find that, applied linguistics or probably also TESOL is also offered within the bigger knowledge management structure of linguistics. So this is understandable. So in this understanding, Davies and Elder's argument carries the implication that linguistics is basically concerned with the language, while applied linguistics is concerned with the language user. They are not alone in this position. Way, for instance, takes the same stance as well, remarking that applied linguistics is a user-centered or user-friendly linguistics. And this is interesting. This argument suggests that applied linguistics is generally believed to be concerned with language learning, and by implication, we are dealing with learner language. And that has also been quite popular nowadays with, along the advancement of technology, where people also talk a lot about corpus linguistics. Some people also have built a corpus of learner language. Well, I also once did that, even though it was not that methodical. We did that. Some colleagues of mine and me have tried to do that. So we're dealing with learner language. That is because, particularly in our university, in our department, we are dealing with language teaching, English language teaching. And then we are also offering linguistics and literature as a study program. And some people may sit well in the middle. So we are also dealing with linguistics, but at the same time, we are also dealing with the phenomena of learner language. All right. And from the foregoing discussion, we can infer what AL, applied linguistics, is currently viewed to be, that it is an independent discipline concerned with the application of paradigms, theoretical models of language pedagogy generated in the main field.
May I interrupting you?
Sorry?
The PPT doesn't work, or?
Oh, really?
Is it still on the slide too, the second slide?
The second slide. All right, let me. Okay. Oh my goodness, I don't know what's going on. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
But my slide doesn't move. I don't know where you were when I stopped, when the PPT stopped. I mean,
On the second slide.
the second slide?
Yeah.
Wait. I don't know whether it's about my computer or about my connection.
Yeah.
Some people say that this is about the connection. I mean, if this kind of problem happens, it's about the connection, not really about the PPT.
Okay, maybe
I
that's
cannot
okay.
even-
You may able to continue. Start from
Wondering
the
if
slide.
wondering if you've seen this or not. Yes?
Yes.
Or no?
Yes, we see it's in a slide 2, defining applied linguistics.
Yeah.
Slide 3 now.
All right. How about this?
Okay, slide 4. You can see
All right.
that.
Have you seen this before?
Yeah, no.
No.
You just see the pointers before
Alright.
this. Okay.
So you simply heard my presentation. Okay, no problem. And actually, I've come to this actually from the foregoing. We can infer what applied linguistics is currently viewed to be. You've heard my voice talking about this, right? So it is an independent discipline concerned with the application of paradigms, theoretical models of language pedagogy generated in the main within the field and not retrieved from linguistics that facilitate the acquisition of second language. So the point here is that this last slide talks about going back to more traditional definition linguistics. And with the growing recognition of second language acquisition as the object of inquiry in applied linguistics, and the proposed separation of applied linguistics from linguistics applied, owing to the supposed inadequacy of linguistic theories and accounting for many language-related issues, there has been a strong preoccupation and theorization of second language acquisition among researchers. Okay, now let's have a look at some exemplification. I hope this is going to work. Wait. Let me go back to this. Does it appear again?
Yes. Okay.
What about this exemplification?
I
Is
see.
it-
It might be because it's a hyperlink, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just see the slide, not the hyperlink one.
All right. I know now. Okay. Let me make the presentation. Wait. Sorry for this technological glitch on my part. Not technological glitch, but I guess it is my problem. How about this?
Can see slide exemplification.
Exemplification, wondering whether it moves to another, sorry. No. It doesn't move to the other slide. Let me do it manually without slideshow. Is that okay, Bu Bapak?
Okay, this
Without the
good.
slideshow.
Yeah, probably okay.
Yeah.
I can see some light on it.
Right. And now we're moving to the next slide. Does it work on your screen?
Yes.
Okay, let me do it, and let's do it manually like this. Sorry about this. Let's have a look at the what do you call this, like the coverage, the scope of a particular journal. And let me just pick up applied linguistics. And applied linguistics recently has had this overture. This journal defines applied linguistics as research into language with relevance to real-world issues. Due to their long-standing commitments to applied linguistics and social justice, Neta Avineri and Danny C. Martinez, the editors of this special issue, were invited to assemble a collection of papers that showcases how applied linguists have developed collaborations with stakeholders outside of academia to collaboratively address inequalities. They invited authors who are dedicated to social justice and collaborative research from a diverse range of locations to share how their work engages with language to address social problems. Across the papers, the authors tackle the problems of discrimination, exclusion, and marginalization in classrooms, university campuses, healthcare settings, and public space, shedding light on how people's actions and ideologies in connection to language perpetuate inequality. Well, Ibu Bapak, what do you think of this? Does it sound to belong to the traditional view of applied linguistics, or does it belong to the more overarching definition of applied linguistics? Anyone who would like to answer, Ibu Bapak? Can you still hear me, Ibu Bapak? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, probably Ibu Fazia will answer.
I'm
Okay,
worried about my
anyone want to
connection,
answer
Ibu
this
Bapak,
question?
actually. Wani, I'm
Go
worried
ahead.
about my connection. But can you still hear me?
Yes, very clear
Okay.
actually.
Okay, good. So to me, this sounds to belong to fall into the category of the broad definition of applied linguistics. This is the journal of applied linguistics, the popular journal in the area. So it addresses issues related to classrooms, but also outside of the classroom. And in this special issue, it addresses issues around inequality, social justice, etc. Okay, another exemplification, I tried to copy and pasted this from the International Journal of Applied Linguistics, another journal popular in the area. So the International Journal of Applied Linguistics publishes articles that focus on the mediation between expertise about language and experience of language. The journal seeks to develop an awareness of the way language works, how it affects people's lives, and what interventions are desirable and feasible to make in different domains of language use and learning. Language use and learning, particularly, there's a mention of learning, but it also mentions about language use in general. So it's not limited to, educational related understanding of applied linguistics. So again, to me, it sounds to fall into the second category of the definition of applied linguistics, more inclusive, more overarching. Okay, now what about linguistics and education? It's also a journal. Well, Linguistics and Education is an international peer-reviewed journal that welcomes submissions from across the world that advance knowledge, theory, and methodology at the intersections of linguistics and education. The journal is concerned with the role played by language and other communicative or semiotic systems in mediating opportunities for learning and participation in a globalized world. Research published in this journal engages with complexities and changing realities of educational contexts and practices, focusing on all levels of formal education, as well as a wide variety of informal learning contexts throughout the lifespan and across most genres and technologies. It is closely related to education, but then you can notice there a wide variety of informal learning contexts. And that's like, like all kinds of contexts. Okay, so those are examples of the scope, we can say scope and also aims of particular journals in the area of applied linguistics in general. Now let's have another kind of exemplification. So I tried to, assemble pieces of information about publication, particularly the current publication of particular journals, and I come up with the visualization, International Journal of Applied Linguistics. So I tried to assemble the current publications, information, particularly from the titles. When I was lucky, I could also access the abstracts, and I tried to visualize it using View as Viewer. And you can see there some points. So those with big nodes, they can be said to be the main issues talked about are words, keywords, repeatedly mentioned by researchers in their research articles published in this journal, the National Journal of Applied Linguistics. This is too small for me myself. Well, actually, I should have been able to. Let's try to have a slideshow. Oh my goodness. What appears on your screen, Guani?
It's the full and exemplification, yeah, on the first slide.
The first slide. So going back to the first slide. Let me move. It seems to be working now.
Yeah, it works.
It works. Okay, good. So we need to be
Okay.
patient then. Because sometimes it simply stops and then it works again. So you see there the word English, study learner. Well, it depends on the words you gathered and you try to display in the View as Viewer though. But by having this, what I mean is I want to have a general view of what has been recently published in this journal. Proficiency is there. What else? Task, use. So we talk about language use. It can be within the context of education. It can be outside the context of education. There's also language use. So in that sense, then it has then a broader definition of applied linguistics. But somehow this journal still also talks about the educational side of applied linguistics. As indicated by the word learner development, I believe this development in terms of, for instance, something like the development of the proficiency. It can be about spoken language, even about writing or whatever. All right. And then, okay, if we pay attention to this, then we can see that, well, the yellow areas here, yellow points indicate the more current research areas that have been attended to by the researchers. Instruction, task, what else? Teacher is still there, a bit greenish yellow, yellowish green. Participant, performance, okay, performance. Error, again, still there. We talk about error analysis, and the word error remains there, and that is still current, as indicated by the color. Right? This is another way of how to look at this. Now let me move on to another kind of exemplification, the data from Linguistics and Education, from that journal. See, the word student is still there. And what about anything related to technology, Bu Ani? Can you find any? Not really there, but probably you delve into
classroom interactions.
Yeah, probably if you delve into more detail, what we call inspection of the publication, one by one, probably you can find something related to technology in this journal, that this general assemblage of words indicating some interest of the researchers.
Based on the last year publications, or based on
the last year? As far as I remember, I tried to download 3 last volumes.
3 last volume. Okay.
3 last volumes. But probably you have another way how to make it more accurate in picturing out the current situation of the publication. I did not have enough time to make refinement of this. But okay, let's try to pay attention to the yellow ones. Student is there, use is there, implication is there related to yellow color. And then roll a bit down, you've got parent related to, parent is always related to education. So that's understandable. All right, let me just move on to this one. Called computer-assisted language learning. Of course, the word technology is there, understandable, and the word development is somewhat big in the note, and the learner is also big in the note, down. And language is also big. I mean, the note indicates the size. Effect, somewhat big there. Okay, now let's try to check the currency. Okay, let's check the color, yellow, effects in yellow, development yellow, self, but small in the size of the node, and an attitude to the right there. That is also small, but it indicates that some researchers are interested in the attitudes. It can be the attitudes of the students particularly. We are talking about computer-assisted language learning. In the Indonesian context, my impression is that many people are interested in the attitudes. It can be attitudes of the teachers and also attitudes of the students regarding the application of particular technological tools. Okay, and this is also indicated by this journal, Computer-Assisted Language Learning. Right. But the variations of the technological tools used do not appear here, unfortunately. Probably if you try to inspect one by one, then you find something like the application of WhatsApp, something like that. The application of particular application, technological application developed by people outside of the educational realm, actually. And then people in the area application try to adopt the use of that particular application for education purposes. Okay. So what is applied linguistics? Going back to that issue in terms of the definitions. Well, to me, the definitions remain the same. I mean, my understanding. The first one is a traditional and rigid definition, and the second one is the broad overarching definition. And I don't know about you yourself, Sri Bapak, whether you would belong to number 1 or you would belong to number 2. But in my own case, going back to 10 years ago, when I tried to launch in my application for professorship, I use my documents of publications in both areas because I didn't want to, to dispel one kind of, one kind of publication, because I publish in those two areas, particularly Buani. Traditional and rigid definition, in the sense that I published some works in the area of education, English language teaching, but I also published some research results in the area that fall into the second category, broad and overarching definition. I also talked about how Indonesian people react to an offer, for instance. Usually, Japanese particularly, if the Japanese are guests and the host offers something, monggo, 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 and usually the response would be, nggih, sampun, padahal belum, right? I also published something like that, and to me, that belongs to the second category of the definition here, broad and overarching definition. To some extent, that belongs to social linguistics. To some other extent, that may fall into the category of pragmatics. But of course, people also talk about the interlanguage pragmatics. That's closer to the first definition of traditional and rigid definition of applied linguistics. So my point here is many things are blurred, but if we should make some kind of demarcation line, then this is the way how I can understand what is meant by applied linguistics, that is by having traditional and rigid definition and broad and overarching definition. And the first definition is pertinent to the outward-oriented applied linguistics, which relates to attempts to solve problems concerning language, including those relevant to language teaching and learning. The first definition. And the second definition can be equalized to the inward-oriented applied linguistics, which has to do with testing or problematizing linguistic concepts for the purpose of advancing knowledge about language itself, hence called linguistics applied. The second point here is closer to linguistics proper, to my understanding. The first one is closer to ELD or ELE, English language learning, English language education, particularly. And the second one is closer to linguistics in general. Or if you agree, this is also called linguistics applied, but not applied linguistics. So this understanding, it can be traced back to the idea of Davis and Elder in the Handbook of Applied Linguistics, published in 2004 or 2008, 2004, I guess. Okay. Now let me come to, the conclusion. So what I can conclude is that applied linguistics, in my view, keeps seeking to advance knowledge in the two directions. Some people are in the area of, rigid definition. Some people are in their more overarching definition of applied linguistics and their research. And if we should we factor digitalization? Bu Ani mentioned about digitalization for my talk, but actually I could not handle that. Another kind of apology, Bu Ani. So I've got an impression that the current situation seems to indicate digitalization as technique for research, like that in corpus linguistics. Well, my colleagues and I actually have delved into this area a little bit, and I've made few publications out of this. And that is in the area of corpus linguistics. And in terms of the data to deal with, we're in the area of learner language, as I mentioned before. That is our corpus linguistic project. And then digitalization as media for teaching and learning, like in CALL, just like I mentioned, probably the use of WhatsApp for teaching and learning, the use of any other, some people have published research into the use of Facebook, any other kinds of, digital technology. I mean, the result of digital technology. So in this case, we can say that digitalization is media for teaching and learning. And another kind is digitalization as media for teacher professional development. For instance, just like this, the use of Zoom as the result of the advancement of technology. We use this for professional or teacher professional development. Okay, so that brings to the end of my presentation. Ms. Moderator, I'll go back to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Yazid, for the enlightenment. I think that is very interesting topic. Now we move to the next session, that is question and answer. I'd like to invite 3 questions from Bapak Ibu. Is there any question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, who speak this?
Yes. Jimmy, ma'am.
Okay, Jim Yati.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, time is yours. Go on.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you for the time. I want to ask to Prof. Yazid. This linguistic is have object is human language. Focusing on the application of theoretical linguistics, the current problem. For example, the COVID issue. The people respond about the COVID issue is many kind of opinions. So I just want to ask about this about rule of the linguistic in the digital era. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Prof. Yazid, do you want to answer the first question or we continue
Yeah,
to the second
well, I
question?
don't really understand the question actually. The question is about the rules. Well, I simply fail to understand that. The rules in linguistics or the rules in the use of language related to the current issue of the pandemic.
Regarding the current issue about hoax, about hoax, how linguistic have a role to respond to hoax for the digital era, in the digital era.
Still, I fail to understand Kim Yanti. Are you talking about the etiquette? Or are you talking about linguistic rules or linguistics theories related to that? Well, my impression is that your question is actually directed towards etiquettes, if I'm not mistaken.
Maybe, sir. But
if that relates to etiquettes, well, I cannot answer that. I've never been in that area. But if you're asking about linguistic issues or linguistic way of how to deal with that, well, some people, well, there are two camps, I guess, here. Some people tend to be rigid in seeing this phenomenon, that is by referring to norms, etiquettes, saying whether that is okay, it is not okay. The resultant would be that, whether it is linguistics. So the first one is the prescriptive way of how to see that phenomenon. The second one is more descriptive. And usually people in their linguistics tend to take the second view, descriptive. So they try to describe the phenomena as they are, and they try to, of course, draw some kind of theoretical understanding out of the phenomena. from inductive point of view.
Okay, Ginyati?
If you see it from prescriptive point of view, usually you've got some kind of agreed norms, and you try to apply the agreed norms to see whether the phenomena is against the norms or not. That is the prescriptive view. If we apply the prescriptive view, and that is also closely related to etiquette I mentioned before. Yes, I don't know whether I answered the question or not. Well, let me give you a kind of comparison to Kimbiatri. Some people, you know, are not happy with graffiti. Some people are not happy with graffiti. If you are teachers, for instance, you may check the desk of your students, and probably you find that the desk is full of graffiti made by your students. So probably as teachers, we are not happy with the graffiti because, well, you may have some views that are good. They simply describe the phenomenon. Probably your question is at least a bit similar to that phenomenon, probably.
Okay.
Excuse me, I can't hear anything.
Sorry?
I can't hear anything. Would you please repeat the question? Analysis, and then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the teachers said that the spirit is not only to find the mistake, to find the the fault, but how the students can understand and to fix it. What is your opinion about this, Prof. Yasin?
Well, okay, that is an interesting question, and it's not really easy to answer. But my view is that at a certain level, it is a good idea to talk about black or white, whether it is wrong or right, whether it is considered to be error or not error. At some point, that is really important. Just like the use of, well, I think all of us have been quite familiar with the use of past tense. You know, when we have, you know, time marker, explicit time marker, then we have to use past tense. When we don't have time marker, but we know that it has happened, then we can use present perfect, for instance. And that is, to some extent, at the SMP, SMA level, secondary school, senior high school, that issue has been brought to the students by the teachers in a black or white mode, usually. And to some extent, that's really helpful for the students because the students need to have you know, a good grip of that. But then as the students advance their studies and then they take more advanced courses, for instance, at the undergraduate level and also at the graduate level, that can be master's and doctoral students. Well, you may see that language is not that strict. For instance, when you try to review somebody's idea in your writing, in your research, in your article, for instance, I agree with Bu Ani Susanti's idea that she published in 2018, for instance. I can say Susanti 2018 rightly points out, for instance, 2018. That is quite clear, right? The time marker is quite clear. 2018, already in the past. But I may say, as Susanti 2018 rightly points out, I'm using present tense in this case. Well, according to the teaching of grammar at the SMP or SMA, that is blatantly wrong, right? Using present tense because you've got a very clear time marker, 2018. But recent research, particularly in the area of corpus linguistics, has shown that, native speakers of English sometimes use that to show the currency, to show his or her agreement with the idea of Susanti. Just like my case, for instance, to show my agreement with Susanti's idea, then I use present tense. Meaning that, the use of present tense here is a bit similar to the use of present tense when you're talking about general truth in traditional grammar. The sun rises in the east, rises, right? Present tense. So as if I'm saying that Susanti's idea is just like the general truth. So that's why I'm using present tense. I show my positive agreement with Susanti's idea. That is possible to use that. So if we use prescriptive approach to see whether that is a wrong application of grammar, probably yes. If I say, as Susanti 2018 rightly points out using present tense, well, if we use our way of teaching like that in our SMP or SNA, then my writing can be crossed out. No way, because there is a clear time marker, 2018, and then you're using present tense. No way, right? But actually, nowadays, corpus linguistics has shown that that is possible. You know what I mean? So my view about error analysis is not that it can be yes, it can be no, depending on several factors. So we need to be aware of the factors that may be attributable to the manifestation of the language, whether it is not that easy to use black or white approach nowadays, but it depends on the level of the education. If it is at the initial level of the education, then probably the black or white approach can be okay. So error analysis as a rigid way of how to see things can be applied that way. But as the education advances to more or to higher level, then we need to be more quote unquote critical. So our understanding and our willingness to see things not only using black or white approach is it can be our criticality in this case. Over back to you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Prof. Yusuf. Okay, from the audience. So we still have about 10 minutes. I opened 2 until 3 questions from students or from the audience.
Let me give you another example while waiting for the other audiences to have questions. How about the use of titles in our acknowledgement sections, for instance? If you check the acknowledgement section writing practice in our country, I believe if you check the writing of acknowledgement sections by your students, I believe the students mention your titles, your complete titles, Ibu Bapak. Is that right? For instance, thanks to my main supervisor, Dr. Ani Susanti, SPD, MPD, the complete titles. That is the Indonesian context. But probably if you compare with that in the American context or the Australian context, probably the title, only the highest title is mentioned, probably. The master titles, the undergraduate titles are not mentioned anymore.
Yeah.
Now, will you consider that as from black or white point of view, or will you consider it in a more tolerant way?
As what Prof. Yazid said before, that it depends. There are many variables that we have to consider before we decide whether it is black or white.
Yeah, in our context, usually it is considered to be black or white, I believe. If your students do not write the complete titles of the supervisors, then you would consider it as a wrong practice.
Yes.
Probably there is such a tendency among us, as Javanese, particularly as Indonesians in general.
So it is any correlation with the culture also, right?
Yeah, that's right. So we need to consider the error analysis always cautiously.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Yazid. Okay, do you have any question? Do you still have any question from students? Or anything is clear?
I have one maybe silly question,
Okay.
Prof. Yazid. Just wonder what application do you use when you were showing us about the trends in journals? Just now like a spider, yeah, okay. Yes, because there are some viewers, okay.
Yeah, viewers.
Because we're just guessing in our...
Yeah, and the assemblage, I simply, well, some of them I use things publish or perish. Some others simply, with the help of the, what do you call the technological tools attached to the journal, because you can simply, you know, how should I say? You can simply push citation and then you can export citation. You can export it and then you can choose RIS file and then you can use the RIS file. I mean, you can populate the RIS files to VOS viewer later. That's simple.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bu Ani. So we have 10 minutes. Prof. Yazid, how about a linguistic landscape? As we know that that topic also many researchers, interest to conduct that research. Is it still possible to conduct that research further?
Sorry, boo, I missed some of the voices.
Yeah, about linguistic landscape.
Yeah.
Is it also belongs to applied linguistics?
Well, if we use the broad definition, the second definition, yes, I believe many things can be thrown there into the junk bin of the broad definition of applied linguistics. That's also true with social linguistics. You know, just like the fact that when I mention about about the way how we usually respond to an offer as Indonesians or particularly Japanese, we tend to have that specific typicality. Well, this reminds me of what happened to me once in the Australian context. Somebody invited us, including me, to a dinner, and then he said something, come on, have this, come on, have this, come on, have this, something like that. And then as a Javanese, I use the Javanese way of responding to that. The Javanese way would indicate the, what do you call, the decline, right? Not acceptance of the offer. And then he commented, I know now why all of you are small, physically small, because you eat less than we Australian do. As if we rejected the offer, as if. Whereas in my mind, I was expecting him to repeat the offer so that I had the justification to take it, right? That is the Japanese way. And, I wrote something about this and I published something about this. And then I also use this as an example in my pedagogical enterprise. I brought this example to the class. So my point here is, when I wrote this, when I did this kind of research, it was a kind of self-reflective research actually. Well, that research proper, to my understanding, falls into the category of social linguistics. But then out of this, I could bring this to my classroom. So how should I say? In this context, then I can say that, okay, by using the broad definition of applied linguistics, I can say social linguistics also belongs to applied linguistics. That is so much so when you bring the results of your social linguistic research into the classroom. And that is also true with the linguistic landscape. So some of the examples can also be brought into your English teaching and learning processes, sometimes not for the purpose of teaching linguistics, but for the purpose of advancing your students' knowledge about the language that they are learning. So in that context, then that's closer to the rigid definition of applied linguistics. So I would see the two definitions are closely related in practice, in real practice.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Yazid, for the answer. I think we now move to the next speaker. So I really thank you for Prof. Yazid. Thank you for coming and for all the audience. I close this presentation with saying Alhamdulillah together.
Thank you once again for having me here. Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much for Ms. Fauzia and our amazing speaker, Professor Dr. Yazid. And now is section giving certificate from the head of English Education Department, Universitas Ahmad Dahlan, Dr. Ani Susanti MPDBI, to our speaker and the moderator, Professor Dr. Yazid Bastami MA and Ms. Fauzia. Then to the operator, please share screen the certificate as a symbolic.
Thank you so much, Prof. Yazid. Actually, if we are just close, I want to hand this certificate directly to you, but then because of this is online, then we all of participants here would like to say thank you so much for sharing and give some insightful inspirations and everything for us. Hopefully, we can learn more from you in the future.
Thank you
very much.
Okay, thank you for the operator and Miss Ani, Miss Fauzia, and Mr. Yazid. Okay, for the next session is presenting by our second speaker, Dr. Gerard Lietienza, and will be led by our moderator, Dr. Ikmi Nur Octavianti MA, the lecturer of English Education Department, Universitas Ahmad Dahlan. For Miss Ikmi, time is yours.
entitled Sociolinguistic Analysis of Linguistic Taboos in Philippine Independent Films. Before proceeding to the presentation or to the talk, let me introduce Dr. Gerard Lee L. Atienza. Dr. Gerard Lee L. Atienza finished Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in English at the former Panay State Polytechnic College, now Capiz State University Purias campus. He obtained Master of Arts in Teaching major in English at Villamer Christian University in Roxas City, Capiz. He finished Doctor of Philosophy in Applied Linguistics at the University of Saint Lascelles, Tacolot City. Presently, he is the research coordinator of the College of Education and the Quality Assurance Chair of Capsule Purias campus. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, in this occasion, there are two parts. The first one is the talk from Dr. Gerard, and the second part is the question and answer session. During the talk, the audience should mute the microphone, and if you have any question, you can leave the comment or the question in the chat box. Okay, without further ado, I would like to welcome Dr. Gerard to present or to give the talk. All right, Dr. Gerard, the floor.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Can I be heard? Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, good morning to all of us who are present in this webinar on current trends in applied linguistics. I am Gerard D. Atienza, and I am a faculty of the College of Education of Capiz State University Purias campus. Foremost, I would like to thank the English Education Department of the Universitas Ahmad Dahlan of Indonesia and Capiz State University for this very huge and amazing opportunity for me to be able to share my knowledge and insights about the topic, current trends in applied linguistics. What I am going to present to you this morning is a portion of my dissertation, which is entitled Psychosocial Linguistic Analysis of Linguistic Taboos in Philippine Independent Films. For the sake of this presentation, I'm only going to present to you the social linguistic aspect of my investigation. Please allow me to share my screen. Is my screen visible? Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so as what I was saying, so the title of my topic that will be presented this morning is Social Linguistic Analysis of Linguistic Taboos in Philippine Independent Films. So the first thing that we have to do is to define some important key terms that can be found in the title, as well as those other key terms that you are going to encounter as I proceed with my presentation this morning. So the first one is social linguistics. Social linguistics, of course, is a component of applied linguistics. Basically, social linguistics is always a current trend and it never runs out of style. Because as long as language and humanity exist, social linguistics is always of trend and is always of relevance. So social linguistics studies the language relative to social or contextual factors. So these social or contextual factors are age, gender, educational attainment, socioeconomic status, and others. The second term is linguistic taboo. So according to Leighton in 2009, as cited in Keture and Limon in 2012, a linguistic taboo is anything that must not be broached or uttered, for it can bring about apprehension, discomfiture, or humiliation. So definitely, linguistic taboos are not supposed to be uttered publicly because of the sensitivity of the topic. Perhaps some of you are questioning, or perhaps some of you have this one in mind as to why is this speaker presenting to us about linguistic taboos. I actually understand the idea that linguistic taboos are very sensitive in nature. In fact, some scholars would say that topics related to taboo expressions are not are expedient or are not advisable for academic study because of the sensitivity of the topic. However, whether we like it or not, linguistic taboos are a part of our culture, a part of our language, and a part of civilization. And of course, linguistic taboos perform functions or purposes which can be used in maintaining a civilized society. The third term is independent films. So independent films are produced outside of customary processes of production, that is with no support from major film studios. In short, independent films are produced with low budget, and at the same time, it makes use of not an A1, not a very popular superstars. So if we compare independent films with the films produced in Hollywood, of course, there is really a huge difference. But one thing that is good about independent films is that the language used in independent films is not restricted. And at the same time, independent films depict the reality of life as well as the life of ordinary people. So let us now talk about linguistic taboo varieties. So in my study, I made use of Battistella's categorization, and these are epithets, profanity, vulgarity, and obscenity. Let us define all of these one by one. The first one is epithets. So epithets are marked by the existence of several types of slurs linked to race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, one's appearance, and disabilities. For instance, if someone calls you a faggot, the word faggot is classified as epithet because it has something to do with gender or sexuality. For instance, another one is that if you are dark-skinned, and if someone calls you Niger or black, then such terms are considered as epithets because they have something to do, because such terms tend to discriminate a particular race or a particular race or group of people. And if, for instance, one person would tell you that you're bowed, you're crippled, okay, so such terms are considered as epithets because they have something to do with one's personal appearance and disabilities. The second type of taboo expression is profanity. So profanity can be categorized as religious cursing. So, for instance, we encounter the expressions, Jesus Christ, jeez, God damn it. So these terms have something to do with God, and God, as we all know, is sacred. And if you're going to use the name of God as a form of an expression, then such term becomes a taboo expression categorized as profanity. The third one is vulgarity. So vulgarity alludes to words or expressions that contain sexual anatomy and excretory functions in a rough manner. For example, you hear the words F-U-C-K, S-H-I-T, and ASS. So these words are considered as vulgarity because they have reference to sexual anatomy and excretory functions. The next one is obscenity. So obscenity refers to expressions that are prohibited from public use because they involve repulsion to the sense, they are abhorrent and impolite and detestable to morality. For instance, you hear the word fuck, shit, these words are considered obscene language and they are not supposed to be uttered in public because they are impolite and they are detestable to morality. Linguistic taboos also have functions. So actually, Anderson and Trudgell 2012, as cited in Pradana 2019, identified 4 functions of taboo language. And these are expletive, abusive, humorous, and auxiliary. Let us define each of them. The first one is the expletive function. The expletive function of linguistic taboos expresses personal emotions. For instance, you are washing your clothes, you're washing your laundry, and at the same time thinking about your plans for your family in the very near future. Then suddenly a lizard happens to jump on your head. And in that case, you get surprised, of course. So you are able to utter a taboo expression. And in that case, such a taboo expression functions as expletive because it is the result of the incident that took place. So in short, an expletive function of linguistic taboo is not directed to anyone. The second function of linguistic taboo, as identified by Anderson and Trudgell, is the abusive function. So abusive function of linguistic taboos is directed to others and it needs a target for which the speaker directs his words. There are instances that a person utters taboo expressions in order to verbally abuse a person. And once he is able to do that, then he is able to satisfy such a function of linguistic taboo, which is to abuse, or the abusive function. The third one is humorous function. So it is uttered in the context of humor. A person uses offensive words for the purpose of joking. There are probably instances that you and your friends use taboo expressions in your conversation for the purpose of adding humor, for the purpose of adding color, and in order to make the conversation lighter and more comfortable. So in that case, taboo expressions are uttered for the purpose of creating a more relaxed environment where everybody could crack jokes. The fourth function of linguistic taboo is the auxiliary function. It means that it is uttered to people, but it is not intended to them as the person being attributed to is not around. For instance, you and your friends have a common enemy. And then you talk about that common enemy of yours. Then as you are having your conversation, you tend to utter taboo expressions which are actually which are attributed to that enemy of yours. So in that case, the fact that your common enemy is not present in the setting, then in that case, taboo expressions are uttered as a form of auxiliary. I also used in my study the categories provided by Wardo 2006 as cited in Anguita 2015. And Wardo identified 4 functions of taboo expressions. And these are to draw attention to oneself, to show contempt, to be provocative, and to mock authority. Let's talk about to draw attention to oneself. So there are instances that a person would utter a strong language in a form of a taboo expression in order to capture the attention of his or her listeners. The second one is to show contempt, means that a person expresses a taboo expression for the purpose of letting another person feel that he does not have any value or that person is not worthy of something. So the purpose of showing contempt is to insult the addressee. Another function of taboo expressions is to be provocative, which advocates that taboo words are uttered to spur certain responses, such as violation or anger from the listeners. So there are also instances that a person would utter taboo expressions for the purpose of provoking another person. And once that person is provoked and is able to respond violently or angrily at the same time, then it is said that this function of linguistic taboo is or becomes successful or is achieved. The fourth one is to mock authority. So it denotes that taboo words are used when some people are not satisfied with public image like a government institution. I believe that there are instances in our lives that we feel so dissatisfied with a public image or with a certain person or with a government institution or agency. So sometimes we tend to utter taboo expressions for the purpose of mocking such an authority because of the dissatisfaction that we feel. Let us now proceed to the pragmatic variables that influence taboo utterance. Jay and Jansowitz, 2008, identified some pragmatic variables that can influence the speaker to utter taboo expressions. And these are, the first one is the conversational topic. I believe that the conversational topic plays a very huge role in determining the level of formality of the conversation. So for instance, if male students, for example, are talking about sex-related topics, then taboo expressions are likely to be encountered in their conversation. However, if a student is talking to the principal about his subjects, then that is going to be a different conversational topic. Then the level of formality of the conversation is more formal. The second one is the speaker-listener relationship that includes gender, occupation, and status. So I believe also that the speaker-listener relationship is very important in determining the way we converse or the way we communicate with our fellows. So, say for example, in terms of gender, females, for instance, are more comfortable to talk about sensitive issues pertaining perhaps to monthly period if they talk about the matter with friends who are of the same gender. In terms of occupation, a janitor would feel more relaxed and would feel more comfortable talking to a fellow janitor, as well as those people who belong to the same status. However, if a janitor talks to his immediate boss, the way the conversation goes on is completely different because it becomes more formal. Because if you belong to the same gender, occupation, and status, that means that the people involved in communication are of horizontal level. But if you're talking to someone who is higher than you, who is a person in authority, that means that it is a vertical level of communication. The third one is the social physical setting of communication, which includes the nature of the occasion, the time, the place, and the level of formality. So I believe also that the social physical setting plays a huge part in determining the level of formality of the conversation. So if the conversation is set in a relaxed, in a comfortable environment, in a very comfortable time, and of course, considering also the speaker-listener relationship, then the level of formality of the conversation is somehow informal. In my investigation, in my dissertation, I also used Himes' speaking grid. So this theory emphasizes the analysis of speech in its cultural context, summarized as follows. The first one is setting. So setting, of course, has something to do with the time and place in which the speech happens. So what time of the day is it? Is it in the morning while having breakfast? Is it also in the morning while eating snacks at the canteen? Is it in the classroom while having your classes? So of course, the way we speak differs from one situation to another. Number two is the participants. Participants are both the senders and the receivers of the message. These are the people who are involved in a particular conversation. So considering the speaker-listener relationship, again, as mentioned, it would be, again, as what I mentioned a while ago, that if if the participants belong to the same gender, belong to the same status for that matter, they are more comfortable and more relaxed in airing out or in expressing what they want to share. Number three is ends. Ends pertains to the goal of communication. Okay? So every time we communicate, we have that very specific purpose in mind. What is our reason for communicating or for expressing? Is it to ask a question or questions? Is it to ask about time? Is it to give an information, or is it for the purpose of exclaiming? The next one is the act sequence. So act sequence refers to the structure and chronology of an event. So the question is, what is being uttered first? Is it a question? So after the question is being uttered, is it being followed by a response? When the response was provided, was another question being asked for the purpose of clarification? So that has something to do with act sequence. Let us now proceed to the next, which is the key. So the key refers to the overall tone or manner of speech. So the way we speak, the tone of our voice or the manner of speaking could affect our conversation with our fellows. So the question is your manner of speaking happy? Is it religious in tone? Is it sarcastic? Is it sad? So the way we communicate is also determined by our feelings. Next is instrumentality. So these are the channels used to complete an utterance. So basically, we have three channels in order for us to communicate. We have oral form, written form, and nowadays we're using the social media form or the information technology in order for us to share what we want to air out. Next is norms. So these are social rules that govern the events and participants' actions and reactions. So every time we communicate, we are governed by norms, and as much as possible, we have to conform to what the society expects from us every time we talk to somebody. And however, there are instances that we tend to not conform with what is expected, but it is in a case-to-case basis. And the last one is the genre. So the term refers to a speech event which can be in the form of a proverb, a riddle, or a poem. So how is language used? Is it in the form of a conversation? Is it in the form of a poem? Is it in the form of a joke? And others. Let us now talk about the background of the study. So, according to Kanbar 2011, it is not expedient to make taboos the subject matter of an academic study, because basically, taboo expressions are very sensitive, in nature. That is why taboo expressions are not supposed to be topics, for an academic study or for a dissertation or for a master's thesis. However, what made me push to work on this study is for me to have a clear understanding and a better understanding as to how linguistic taboos work in the Philippine setting. Because because again, whether we like it or not, linguistic taboos have already become a part of our vocabulary, and they have also become a part of our culture. Another thing which motivated me to work in this study is that there are very few studies conducted about taboo words in the Philippines and perhaps in the international level because of the sensitivity of the topic. So here, it motivated me, it inspired me to provide a better dimension as to how taboo expressions indeed work. So it is of essence to provide a new dimension and a deeper understanding as to how taboo expressions work in the Philippine context in terms of varieties, functions, pragmatic factors, and socio-cultural meanings. For my statement of the problem, the first one is, what varieties of linguistic taboos present in Philippine independent fields? Okay, so here I wanted to find out what are the types of taboo expressions prevalent in the Philippine setting, and also I'd like to find out if there are emerging varieties or types of linguistic taboos unique to the Philippines. The second one is, what functions do linguistic taboos serve? Here I wanted to find out using Anderson and Trudgell's categories and Wardow's categories. I wanted also to find out if there are emerging functions of taboo expressions in the Philippine setting. Number three is, what pragmatic factors influence the utterance of linguistic taboos? So I wanted to test if Jay and Janszowicz's pragmatic factors in relation to Hines' ethnography of speaking are indeed factors that can influence or motivate a person to utter taboo expressions. And the fourth one is, what sociocultural meanings are reflected in the choice and purpose of using linguistic taboos in Philippine independent films? So out of my analysis of the taboo expressions in terms of its type, functions, and the pragmatic factors, I was able to draw out the sociocultural meanings of taboo expressions in the Philippine setting. So what you are seeing this time is the conceptual model of my study. I'd like to inform the group that this conceptual model is modified for the purpose of this presentation. Again, I did not include the sociolinguistic aspects of my dissertation because I wanted only to focus on the sociolinguistic side of my investigation. So it can be noted here that I identified the linguistic taboos present in Philippine independent films. After that, I classified them according to types. After that, the next thing that I did was to find out the functions of linguistic taboos in the Philippine setting. And I also analyzed the pragmatic factors using Jay and Janszowicz's pragmatic variables and related such pragmatic variables to Hines' speaking model. And after which, I was able to come up with sociocultural meanings and a guide to understanding social taboos in the Philippine society. And this one is the expected output of my dissertation. Let us now talk about the methodology. For the research design, I made use of mixed methods research design that is using both quantitative and qualitative research design. Okay. So in short, I was able to gather quantitative data and qualitative data. So specifically, I used the explanatory sequential design. That is by gathering quantitative data first. And out of the quantitative data gathering phase, I was able to come up with a qualitative one for analysis. So for the participants of the study, I made use of a conveniently sampled groups of 60 students and 60 parents from both rural and urban areas for the purpose of validating the taboo words or expressions which I extracted from the films, driven by the idea or by the fact that what may be linguistic taboos to me as a researcher may not be linguistic taboos to other people. So what I did was to have my listing of taboo expressions validated by 60 students and 60 parents from both rural and urban areas. Let us now proceed to the instrument and data gathering procedure. The first thing that I did was to download independent films from YouTube. I was able to download like 40 plus independent films from YouTube. And out of the 40 plus independent films, I was only able to utilize 6 independent films for my dissertation. Why is this so? Because I had to see to it that the downloaded films are able to meet the selection criteria which I set for my investigation. And these selection criteria are as follows. The first one is that the independent films have to be gay themed. That means that the main character, as well as other presence of other characters in the film, must be members of the LGBTQIA+ community. The second one is the film's runtime should not be less than 1 hour, but it should not be more than 2 hours. The third criterion which I used is it has to be tragic. The genre should be tragedy in order for me to get a more raw usage of language in the conversation of the characters in the film. And the fourth one is that it needs to have an English subtitle in order to aid translation. But it's not just enough. It's not just enough that the film should have subtitles, because I had to see to it that the subtitles should match what is being said on screen, or what the characters say. So in short, there should the subtitles should match what the characters the characters' lines. The next thing that I did was this. So the qualified films were watched, and every encountered taboo word was transcribed with its corresponding English translation based on the subtitle. So that's what I did. So I spent hours and hours, nights and nights watching those films and taking down those taboo expressions being uttered by the characters, as well as the corresponding English translation. And it's not just enough for me to only get the linguistic taboos uttered by the characters, but I had to get the entire conversation of the characters, which helped me in my analysis of pragmatic variables, as well as the functions of taboo expressions. So after that, I conducted a survey using 60 students and 60 parents from both rural and urban areas to validate the taboo expressions which I was able to list down. So again, driven by the idea that what may be linguistic taboos to me may not be linguistic taboos to other people. So that is why I had to validate such taboo expressions taken from the films. For the data analysis, so linguistic taboos were then tabulated using descriptive statistics such as frequency count and percentage. So after conducting the survey, so I tabulated the taboo expressions which qualified. So all in all, I had 120 respondents, and 1/2 of 120 is 60. So 60 plus 1, that is 61. So those taboo expressions which ranged from 61 to 120, those taboo expressions in which their frequencies range from 61 to 120 were considered for further analysis. The next one is the taboo expressions which qualified for deeper investigation were analyzed in terms of varieties, functions, and pragmatic factors using the paradigms which I which I presented a while ago, the framework which I presented a while ago. And of course, experts in the field of applied linguistics were sought to act as interpreters. So there's a need for me to find out if my analysis was reliable. So what I did was to seek the aid